Okay. So, welcome to Writing Winning Offers. We've done a lot of training on writing winning offers in this market because we're in the hottest market in decades. But this training is going to be specifically on writing winning offers on foreclosures. This is actually a valuable training because we're starting to see more foreclosure assignments, and a lot of the economists that opine on real estate think that REO is going to be on the rise and somewhat significantly for the next few years. So this is a great skill for you to have, and it'll also keep your stress levels down and your frustration down, because sadly listing brokers for REO are infamous for being terrible at responding to questions, answering phones, basically communicating at all. And that can create stress for your client, right? Because they want to know an answer. You say, let me find out. And then you call a listing broker and you leave 17 messages. They all go unanswered. And what does the client start to think about you? They start to wonder if you're competent enough, right? And it reflects poorly on you. So you really want to frame things in a fashion that makes it so their expectations are realistic, and you're going to take a sort of a posture of verifying everything you can without having to involve the listing broker, because you know he's not going to be so reliable. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about the offer itself and how to make sure that it's written in a fashion that is going to help you win. So let's dive into that, all right? So first things first is identifying properties, right? You're going to use the MLS. There are going to be occasions where you may come across an off-market property or one of our pre-market properties, right? Each one of these has a different opportunity and a different method of research, right? So the MLS is easy. It's on there. Most listings of REO properties on the MLS are going to be not as detailed as you're used to, because if an agent represents a retail home seller, they know the retail home seller is going to look at that listing and scrutinize it. So they try and do a much better job. REO brokers are less concerned about that, and they handle a higher volume of houses, so it tends to be more sparse. Once you find that property, though, there's nothing that stops you from checking county records. You can call homeowners associations and property management companies if that applies, and you can get a lot of information. The key about a foreclosure, the thing that a lot of people misunderstand, is really twofold. When they buy them, they think they're going to inherit unpaid liens and other costs, and that's not true. When a foreclosure gets completed, it extinguishes all of the subordinate liens. So a second mortgage lender, for example, if I were going into foreclosure with my first mortgage, my second had better do something, or they're going to get left out in the cold and they're not going to get a nickel. So what'll happen is they'll actually make payments on the first to keep the first from foreclosing so that they can foreclose. That's how you protect your position if you're in second position. Well, all of those semantics are because they know that it gets extinguished. I'm telling you all this so that you have the peace of mind when your client says, hey, I saw on there was an unpaid water lien, or I saw, that there was an unpaid HOA, or how do we verify that I'm not going to inherit anything? Well, you're not. That's why.
What about tax liens? Do they get extinguished?
Tax liens have to be paid. The bank basically is the opening bidder at the foreclosure auction, and their opening bid is a function of whatever was not paid to them. So it typically is the unpaid principal balance, unpaid interest, any late fees and attorney fees and BPO fees, whatever. They total all that up and they go, okay, trustee, our opening bid is $483,216. It's a very specific number because they've accrued all of this debt. And if the home is worth more, some investor is going to say, I'll pay $484. If no one does that because it's not even worth $483 in my example, then it reverts back to the bank for the $483. any seconds, any unpaid taxes, any of that stuff, the bank has to deal with, right? That, not the seconds, but the unpaid taxes. So the second just loses out. The bank has to deliver marketable title before they can put it on the market to sell. And that's why you've probably seen on our pre-market list, we have a couple houses on there that have been on there for about a year now. And that's because they have to clear the title. We can't sell it. You know, in years of doing this and selling 1,000 of these, there's only been like 2 occasions where we put it on the market, got it under contract, and then figured out that the bank hadn't done their due diligence and there was a title issue. And we had to tell the buyer to either hang on or go find something else. So the bank wants to avoid that. So you're now a buyer's agent. You have a client who's fallen in love with a home. You should start doing your due diligence to figure out what's the status of that home. If it's an REO, that means it's already been through the foreclosure auction. So when you go to public records, you're more than likely going to see U.S. Bank or the name of a securitization fund. That's a common thing you'll see where it'll say Deutsche Bank, 1.365 fund. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? So that means the foreclosure's been completed and an REO broker has probably already been assigned. So when you come across these, you're welcome to ask me what is the backstory, because it's either been assigned to us because we're one of the top brokers, or it's through one of our clients and we can probably get in touch with them and find out who is the broker. Maybe even get them to reassign it to us. That's a great win, because then we could double in that deal, right? So once you've identified it, you do your research. If it's an REO, it's more than likely going to be on the market or coming on the market. And when that's the case, the banks say, we aren't going to entertain offers until it goes on the market and it's been on the market for a period of time.
And that's in a listing?
It won't be in the listing. It may be in the listing. Forgive me. With HUD and Fannie Mae, it'll say offers to be reviewed on X date. With some of the other banks, like Caliber, that's not in their remarks. But if you submit an offer on the first day, CAT's going to say, I can't send it in until Thursday, so please be patient. And sometimes agents get pissed off, right? But just the key is for you guys is you're in a wonderful position because you have some tremendous REO experience and resources available to you. So you can always come across to your client as being very plugged in and knowledgeable. And when they have questions, say, you know what, that's a great question. Let me go ask the guy that runs our REO department so I can get you a perfect answer, right? So you don't have to wing it, but you can always get answers, okay? So let's talk about the offers themselves. So you've done your research. Now we're writing an offer, right? So the thing about writing offers on REO is, if you think about this sort of foundational problem, right, that is the listing broker is not going to be very helpful, okay? The better job that you can do of writing an offer that is clean and tight and communicates to them and the asset manager that you've sold REO before puts you in a much stronger position, right? Because the asset manager may get multiple offers, but if he sees an offer that has, an expiration date of 24 hours, he knows that's an agent that's never sold an REO already, right? Because banks don't respond that quickly. So that's why this training is so valuable, because I'm going to give you all the little things that you should do in your offer to make it cleaner and communicate to that asset manager that you know what you're doing, okay? So let's start with the close date. One thing that people are always surprised at, in fact, Janice, you made this comment yesterday, is when the seller counters and moves the close date further out, right? You had that happen on yours, right? And that's because of how the asset managers are compensated. So asset managers get paid not on closings, but on the receipt of the proceeds from the closing. So you want to write all of your offers to close on or before the 26th or 27th of the month, depending on where the weekend falls. Because if it closes on the 26th, then the wire can be received before the 30th, and the asset manager gets paid because it contributes to, they close deals all throughout the month, but that money would count towards this month if it gets received in time. Does that
Mine
mean?
is just opposite.
Well,
Like 22nd, they countered 30th.
the 30th. Oh, I thought you were going to say they countered the first or second, because that's what happens more often. So let me just summarize this. So always write to close a few days before the end of the month. All right. Now, when they counter to push it back, they don't usually push it back to the 30th. They'll push it back to like the 3rd or 4th, because there's a metric that they get measured on, which is how many escrows did you bring in starting the month, and then what percentage of them did you close in the month. So they would rather have that thing start early in next month, because if it were to get delayed, it would still close within the month. Does that make sense? So don't be surprised if the bank counters with pushing the date into the next month. All right? Do that with. What else can we do?
So don't put an expiration date at all.
You're stealing my thunder, right? Offer expirations. So it's not that you're not going to put none at all, but you're going to put 7 to 10 day for a response. That communicates to the asset manager loud and clear that you understand banks take some time, right? It's also very helpful to look in the supplements, because most good REO brokers, even though they don't respond to phone calls, they'll put instructions in the listing. Follow those to the letter. That's why they don't return calls, because most of the questions they get are in those instructions. Make sense? In fact, I'll make this its own primary bullet. All right. How about title and escrow? What do you think you should put there?
In the instructions, usually they say where they want it to go.
That's right, Jason. Got you. What did you lady say?
We determine the best level. Usually says.
Yeah, so what Jason said was the instructions typically will say. What they often say is this: seller to direct. Because all of these banks have negotiated discounted title and escrow fees from national vendors, and they're aware that the law says the buyer gets to choose. That's what the law actually says. But the seller wants to choose. So what they write, and we just saw this in Janice's contract that I had on the screen before we started recording, it said, if you use the sellers, then you'll get the benefit of the discount and we'll split that. But if you choose your own, you're paying for mine too. You're paying for the sellers as well. And that's a very common approach, and that's how they kind of force the buyer to use whoever their preferred vendor is, right? So absent of a direction that says, please list First American or Chicago or whomever, put seller to direct. Because
but if I did not, I already put, I don't ask her what should I say at this point.
Well, the bank addenda supersedes what you wrote.
Okay.
So,
So they say I need to send the earth money to service link. Is that a type of escrow company?
that's their escrow. Yep. Yep. So let me just finish this note. So you're going to write seller to direct unless the offer instructions specify a company. And again, writing either seller to direct or the proper company communicates to the asset manager that you're competent, you're thorough, you're professional, and you've done this before, right? What about closing costs?
And this market, can you ask the bank for closing costs?
So the question was, in this market, can you ask the bank for closing costs? Sure. Should you, though? Right? There's a big difference, right? There's the logical sort of perspective, which is all the bank cares about is their net. So if you're going to ask for closing costs, just make sure that you pad it enough or make sure the net is competitive. If you think you're in a multiple offer situation, you should offer above asking price to offset the closing cost credit if you're asking for one. That's the logical part. The emotional part, and asset managers are human, is, oh, now they want to pick my pocket, right? So if your client needs them, you got to ask for them. But try and coach your client not to ask for them, right? Because it looks better. Even though the net might be exactly the same. You were going to offer 410 and ask for 10 grand, but instead you offered 400 and asked for 0. That just looks better, right? So closing costs, you can ask, but it's better not to. All right. The other things that you can and should do are waive, all caps, waive paragraph W in Form 21 and 28. What is that?
Information verification.
That's right, information verification. It used to be paragraph X, but in the latest revision, it's now paragraph W. So do that. You should do that in any of your offers where you think it's going to be competitive because it'll benefit your client, right? It communicates to the listing broker and the seller that you're not looking for a cheap out.
Hey, Ed,
Yes, sir.
can we cross out that paragraph and not have it be a legal thing?
Have it be a legal thing.
Well, I've heard before that if you cross out portions of the 21 or 28, that it's not legally binding. I've heard that before.
It is if it's initialed by all parties.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't surprise me if an attorney said that, but attorneys like to.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, they know more than we do, obviously.
They want to facilitate your perception that they're critical to the process.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Form 17. What do you think you could do there to be aggressive? Waive the right to revoke. That's right. And actually, a lot of banks will insist on that. Some banks won't provide Form 17. If you hit the button on the side, the ringer will shut off. Thanks. Are foreclosures exempt from the Form 17? No, they're not. That's right. Banks are not exempt from the seller disclosure.
So you can back out because they didn't give it to you?
They know that you have that right. That's why they ask preemptively for you to sign things, right? So you said that, Dina, with an air of, I got them. I found a loophole. You want to communicate to the asset manager that you're not looking for loopholes. So as smart as that is and knowledgeable about contracts, show them proactively that I'm I'm plugging that hole so that you don't have to worry about my client pulling the plug on this thing, right? So at the very least, have them sign the waive of right to revoke. In most cases, you also want them to sign waive right to receive a completed disclosure.
So what if there's no Form 17? You don't have to do that anyway.
That's a great question. What I would do, if no Form 17 provided, submit a page 6 with your offer.
Oh, cool.
Let them off the hook,
Oh, cool.
because I want to show the asset manager, hey, your listing broker didn't do such a great job for you, but I am. I'm helping you. Here, we'll waive this up front, right? Again, all of these things compound to reinforce in the asset manager's mind that you're going to be easy to work with, and you're knowledgeable, and you're experienced, right? That's the message we want them to hear loud and clear. And the more of these little things that you do, the more that gets communicated, right? Because you don't get the benefit of submitting a frilly cover letter with these offers. You know, a lot of them are just put them in a portal, and then the purchase and sale follows. So this doesn't change the need to write a strong offer financially, like economically, put your best foot forward. But when you send the agreement in, they're going to see all these alterations and they're going to love you. The other thing you can do is in some of the instructions, offer instructions, there will be bank-specific changes to the local MLS forms. Great example is Freddie Mac. Freddie knows the Northwest MLS forms well enough to know about paragraph W and about the default language for assessments and that sort of thing. Make sure you reflect those changes. Again, reinforces that, hey, this person is thorough and knowledgeable and doing a good job.
What's the page 6?
That's the last page of Form 17. Earnest money. If the bank doesn't tell you who escrow is before you write your offer, should you submit a copy of the earnest money check with your offer?
Is there a check at the bottom that comes?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's right, Jason. Submit a photocopy of the check with your offer. Even if it's made out to seller to direct, which is going to seem weird, right? Because you can't negotiate that check. You can't cash it, deposit. You can't do anything with it. But again, you're demonstrating to the asset manager that you're thorough and the buyer is ready, willing, and able to make that deposit. And it's easy to get a buyer to write it because you can point to it and say, this thing's, useless. You can I'll photocopy it and give it back to you. You can tear it up. Make sure, though, when the instructions come, make certain that you deposit on time, because they will use that as an excuse to get out of the deal. And in a hot market like this, they're fearful. They've accepted your offer, but they're fearful that you're not going to perform. And that's the first clue to them that you ain't going to perform. So they pull the plug and they go with a different offer.
Next business day is best.
It's whatever's in the instructions. But that's a good policy. Next business day will make you look better and your buyer, right? All right, what other questions do we have about?
Signing. So which addendums do we need for these? Do we need any special addendums or just what they include?
Let me start a new slide. And let's talk about that. Addenda. So you're going to write your offer. Remember, an offer is a reflection of the buyer you're representing, right? And their anxieties or their needs more than it is the property that you're buying. So you're going to write your offer however you would write it based on what the buyer needs. Financing, whatever.
So an EF would be stronger than a 22, right? The banks, do they care?
I'm going to make you ask that question again. So I'm going to include normal addenda based on your client's needs. So Dina's question was a 22 EF is stronger than a normal. I don't know what you're comparing that
And a
to.
22A.
So a 22 EF is different than a 22A. So are you asking,
Would it make it stronger if you did that instead of 22?
well, yeah, you're waiving financing.
Right.
Is that what you
Yes.
realize you're waiving financing when you do that? Okay.
He knows.
Because that's a big question. I want to make sure people don't make a mistake. It's not one or the other. It's, I am not going to have financing contingency. That's a huge statement and very rare statement that you would make if someone is getting a mortgage. I probably could count on one hand how many times I've received offers on my listings where they were getting a mortgage, but they did not have a 22A.
It's not a good idea.
I'm giving you an opinion. I'm just telling you it's very uncommon. Make certain of it that that's the right move for your clients. And you'd better know it well enough to be able to explain what the risks are. And this video is not about that. I have a whole video on 22A. When you need it, why you need it, all those things. So watch that video. But yes, a 22 EF is stronger because you have chosen to waive financing. But you still have to disclose that you're using contingent funds, which is what a mortgage is. But that's an advanced technique. What we're really talking about here is which addenda am I going to use typically? And that's going to be 22A, D, J, K, Form 35, right?
A, D, J, J.
22A, D, J, if older than 1978, K, Form 35.
That's not a lot.
Never escalators. All right. Banks won't consider those. They won't consider them on short sales either. And we had a kind of an advanced maneuver conversation, Janice and I, just the other day about inspections. Most bank addenda gives you the right to do an inspection, whether you have a Form 35 or not. So Janice's question was, would it be wise to leave that out to communicate to the bank how interested we are? I can't give you my opinion on whether that's wise. It's your client's decision. But in our conversation, we found out that her client wants to tear down the house anyway. So yeah, I'd be more comfortable there for sure. So most bank addenda give you the right to inspect, but you may not know until you get the addendum. So don't take that risk unless you're sure. Make sense? Somebody is chatting at me. See you, Robin. Have a nice weekend. All right.
Are banks more tempted to take a cash offer or a 22F over a 22A if the price is the same?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had my coffee cup to my mouth. What Dina asked was, are banks going to accept a cash offer over a finance offer if they're the same offer amount? And the answer is always. Always. Cash offers actually can afford to be less than a financed offer and still get accepted.
How about a 22F and a cash? Would that be the same?
I don't know what 22F is.
22E.
Yeah, no.
No, still cash over there?
Yep. Yeah, because you're not cash with a 22EF,
But
right?
you're waiving the financing.
Right. So
Your earnest money.
all that means is you can't afford to buy it. You're relying on somebody else, but you're willing to risk your earnest money because you're confident. It doesn't guarantee you're going to close.
Right.
All I get is the earnest money out of that. I don't want the earnest money. I want to sell the house. So if Janice's client offers 10 grand less and is cash, I have zero risk of her failing to perform.
That's what happened on the 9-bed. We lost it because of the cash offer.
Yeah. See, you saw it firsthand,
Found it out.
right? So cash always wins when the same amount, and usually wins even when a lesser amount. All right. All right. So that's pretty much it. If you do those things, you will win more often, and you will have created a greater perception in the listing broker about your competence. So make it a great day.